Good evening and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host George Binns, and our special guest tonight is City Councilor, Councilor, it's not Alderman, I'm still way back.
City Councilor,
City Councilor in his last term, Jim Latter.
Hi,
Jim,
Elliot.
welcome to the show.
How are you? Thanks for having me again.
Excellent, excellent.
How's everything going?
It's going well.
Yeah, I see you're wearing green for the high holy month of March and St. Patrick's Day.
I like to stay in tune with everybody. you know me. Everybody is good.
I don't always look good in green, but I did wear a tie that my dear departed mother on her last trip to Ireland brought me a tie with Irish pubs on it. So every chance I have to wear it between now and St. Patrick's Day is a good occasion.
Oh, that's great. Great. It always, it's colorful. See, yep. I wear colorful ties. I was in Starbucks a little while ago, and a guy said to me, "Geez, I like your tie." Did they ever say that to you, George?
No.
Okay. See, I rest my case. Yep. Anyhow, Jim, how long have you been a city councilor?
I have been a city councilor for a little over 9 years. I'm in my 5th term. This will be my last term. As my good friend Arthur Powell has told me, I had a better offer. I got engaged last year, and I'm getting married the end of this year, and it seemed like the perfect time to wrap up this public portion of my public service.
Well, as an intermarriage sort of thing, I can say mazel tov.
Absolutely.
That's great. Good news. Good news.
She does have me read the Passover Seder, but I have the coloring book with it phonetically, so they do manage to get it out of me.
So you do color from right to left instead of left to right?
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure. I have to say, Jim, my experience with people in the city council in the past X number of years, almost 10 years, from my perspective, you're one of the best councilors we've had.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I try to do my homework and get the work done. I will say, all of the people that I've served with on the city council and before that in the school committee, all work hard, all do their homework, all come to the table and try to do what they think is best for the community and the city. We might not always agree with what they think is best, but I've never doubted for a moment that they've been doing what they think is best. And as long as we have people serving in public office doing what they think is what's best for the city, I think overall we'll be in great shape.
I can't disagree with you. I wish that same philosophy would go with the state and federal government, because it seems to me that, particularly in the federal government, the party is more important than the people. And I find that really frustrating and really annoying.
I think both parties have drifted further from the center. Actually, a friend of mine once said, politically, I said, I tried to be right in the middle of the road. And you remember Rob Valliere.
Yeah.
I said, right in the middle of the road, Rob. And he said, that's a great place to get run over. So I think it's been difficult for elected officials as they do face, primary campaigns against entrenched groups that tend further away from the center than the general electorate, to hold that middle ground. And I think, both parties have suffered from, or I think the country has suffered from both parties drifting a little further away from the center than many would like.
I think part of the problem you're alluding to is that when people are concentrating in the center, they're ignoring what's going on in the periphery, and all of a sudden, more and more people on the periphery, left and right, have now said, hey, you're not addressing my issues. You're not even talking to me about them. So therefore, let me get a group together so you listen to more of us. And the Republicans started it with the Tea Party, and now the, I don't know what you call the extreme left anymore. They got
the majority.
Only in the House.
Well, that gets into the other issue that people keep pushing the idea that we want to get rid of the Electoral College. And there is a lot of stuff going on that I don't think people have a real understanding of why we are the way we are. And they want to make a change.
My basic problem with the Electoral College is it does allow a minority, a candidate who got fewer votes than the other candidate.
So what? We're not a democracy.
We're not a democracy.
Here's there's elements of the Electoral College I think are good. It forces you to appeal across a wide span of the country. I think that the problem is the way that the apportionment goes, because there's 2 senators, and if you look at states like, I think, Delaware, Montana, Alaska, Wyoming, they get 3 electoral votes each, and their population doesn't necessarily justify it. So just let me finish.
Yeah.
I would be willing to, I think a better system would be to keep the Electoral College, but eliminate the 100 electors that go with the Senate, and just make the Electoral College based on House of Representation
What you want to do is stack the vote for the majority.
No, no, no.
Because
No,
you basically have eliminated the Electoral College by
You did.
doing what
Well,
you're suggesting.
But then you keep your winner-take-all state by state. So that if you get 90% of the vote in California, 90% of the vote in New York, and lose the rest of the country, you'll still lose.
No, you won't.
Well, yes, you would.
If you win the 5 big cities by population, you win the majority votes.
I don't want to necessarily have straight popular vote, but I do think that the Electoral College should be adjusted so that the amount of electoral votes per state is proportional to the population of that state.
You just destroyed the whole concept of the Electoral College.
That exactly destroys the whole concept of the Electoral College.
That's getting right back to the issue of how many votes did she get, or Al Gore got.
I mean,
Well, you're absolutely right. The Republicans' last 2 presidents got into office by getting less votes than the person that they
okay,
named.
I have an idea. Why don't we instead...
No, isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
Okay.
But why don't we instead say the person who gets the most mileage, in other words, who controls more square miles in the country, why don't they get elected president? Because then you're going to have a Republican every single time, because the Republicans win more states, they have more mileage. I mean, the Midwest, the Montana.
Are there any other elections in this country, local, state, or federal, that have a system in which the person who got less votes than another person wins the election?
Do you know what a
Maine.
Do you know what a republic really is? We're a democratic republic.
No.
So we have 50 states. Each state elects.
I understand
Okay.
how the system works.
You don't like it. I understand
I'm just
that.
saying that if we're going to tinker with it, I would not get rid of the entire concept of the Electoral College and go strictly with
Okay.
popular vote. I would stick with the concept of 50 state elections. The only thing I'd say is I would adjust the compensation of electoral votes to reflect the population at the time.
Well,
That's
you're
just my
back to a
position.
popular vote doing
Well,
that.
no, it wouldn't be.
Yes, it would.
Well, no, it wouldn't, because you could win New York and California by 90% margins and then still lose the electoral vote. As a matter of fact, I remember trying to do the math, and I think Trump may have still won had you done that. I'm not positive, but I think even with that apportionment, I think the Electoral College would have been closer. I think he still would have won because he won by narrow margins in a lot of places and lost by big margins in a few places.
Right.
So an Electoral College under my system would still protect areas of the country that you don't think that the people wouldn't necessarily pay attention to.
Okay, but let's talk about Trump for a second.
Sure.
Okay, I understand that the Democrats or the liberals in general are upset they lost the election, because it wasn't their fault. They had a really horrible candidate in Hillary Clinton, but it was, they don't like Trump. Okay, I didn't like Obama, but I didn't hate Obama. I didn't like his policies. I didn't like his politics, but I lived through it for 8 years, never said a bad word about the guy. I said a bad word about the policies. Okay? Now, is it a bad thing that more minorities are getting jobs now than ever before? Is it a bad thing that the stock market is where it is? Is it a bad thing that fewer people have to be on welfare now? Is it a bad thing that more companies are moving back into this country.
Well,
Is it
I
a
don't know
bad
about
thing?
more companies moving back. GM just closed a plant in Ohio last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've put
Actually, they've closed 7 plants, but that's another story because they're reflecting that the electric cars are coming and they've got to readjust their whole operation to get away from IC-powered cars to electric. Yeah.
fair enough. Fair enough. But I think promises were made in areas of the country that we're going to bring these jobs back here, and manufacturing jobs aren't necessarily coming back.
They're coming back.
Well, no. Unfortunately, manufacturing jobs haven't gone elsewhere. They've gone. They've gone to automation.
Yeah.
They've gone to various
80%
different
of the
things.
jobs went to automation.
Right.
Rather than China or Mexico or some other
Correct.
low rent district.
I mean,
Yeah.
China and Mexico are losing manufacturing jobs to automation as well.
Oh, yeah.
But there's different kinds of jobs that will become available to people because somebody's got to control the automation.
No.
So
I understand, but promises were made that this kind of back to the future manufacturing job that your parents or grandparents had back in the 50s would be brought back.
And we were
I
going to
don't think
save
that's
money on health care too, and that didn't work. So
No,
promises are made.
But we are at least providing health care to people without being iced out of the system by pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
There are things in our healthcare system today that we didn't have 10 or 15 years ago
Yes, there
that
are.
are worth holding on to.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
no question about that.
Not a total loss, I agree with that, but some of the
I mean, in my opinion, the biggest problem with healthcare in America isn't the structure in which we pay for it. It's how much we pay per person. Why is healthcare in the United States over $8,000 to $9,000 per person when in the industrialized countries of Europe it's $3,000 or $4,000?
Because and why is it that we pay so much less in taxes than the people do in Europe, in Scandinavia? All it is a different way of paying for something. Okay?
I'm just saying, healthcare, the delivery of healthcare per person in this country is, in some cases, double what it is in other Western
you recognize
industrialized
the fact
democracies.
that the government has made healthcare a monopoly. You cannot write a prescription unless you got a license. You cannot fill a prescription unless you got a license. You cannot fill a prescription.
Are you trying
for
to tell me
anything.
we should not license pharmacists and
No,
doctors?
but once the government makes a monopoly, then they've got to regulate it.
Oh, I have to disagree. I think that the government especially has a role in professional licensure.
Yeah, don't doubt that. No.
Whether it's passing my electrician's exam or a bar exam, and it also have
Not
the coercive
arguing that.
power
What
of
I'm
government
saying is that-
to, when you get these professionals who aren't performing well, it's I know Elliot doesn't always like to give the coercive power of government to government officials, but I think that's one area that we think when professionals aren't performing well, the government should have the ability to come in and take that licensure away, as we do see
don't
happen.
disagree with that. But once they start doing that, you now get into a situation where you have a monopoly and they can charge anything they want. And when you get old enough to get on Medicare and start getting those reports from CMS, and you see a $5,000 bill that turned into $125, you understand that this is what Medicare is doing. They are controlling prices. Okay? So that is one of the reasons why you can have a reasonable cost for medical coverage.
So the single payer system controls prices and makes it work. Is that what you're saying, George?
It does, yeah.
Great. Let's have a single payer for all.
Yeah. Why not?
I'll sign me up.
Okay. That was easy.
Yeah, except I don't agree with it.
Okay,
but
why
that's
not?
But that's a separate.
I think right now,
wait a minute.
Okay, but right now, what I think we have is, I think in some ways we have the best of both worlds, but in some ways we have the worst of both worlds. The one thing Obamacare did was the Affordable Care Act kept the private health care competition out there, and in some ways it drives innovation, and that's a good thing. But in some ways, it costs a lot more money, and that's a bad thing.
It drove the cost up to make it unattractive.
The best way to reduce the price is to have competition. The government doesn't allow certain competition with insurance companies in every state.
Well,
you have competition.
If that's the case,
you've got
why is
lower
healthcare
prices.
in the United States double what it is in Germany?
Well, let me ask you this, because this is all related. Why is it that people from all over the world come to the United States for healthcare? Why is it that most medical breakthroughs are in the United States?
I agree that most medical breakthroughs are in the United States, but a lot of Americans go on healthcare holidays to other countries because the healthcare is more affordable.
Yeah.
More affordable, but not necessarily better.
Well, I said that earlier. I said, we get the best and worst of both worlds, and
Right.
the best of our health care, and I think we are
But the
second to none.
capitalist system that we have allows for makes us the best.
Right.
So would you rather have the best? The best cost more. A Cadillac costs more than a Chevy. Why? Because it's
Marketing.
better.
It doesn't go any faster, and it doesn't get any better mileage.
No, but it's more comfortable.
Marketing and bells and whistles.
It's got more bells and whistles.
And now we get back to the other issue that the pharmacies keep talking about. Oh, we got to spend all this money to do the research. They spend more money on advertising than they do on research.
Right.
So some of this stuff that's going down is as phony as a $3 bill. And I think this is part of the problem, that politicians are supporting the people that are supporting them. And we're not
Here's a
getting
novel
it.
concept. Politicians are supporting the people that support them.
Yes.
In other words, lobbyists.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Well, that's not what he said.
That's
I'm
what I
going to turn the
meant.
tables on you, Elliot, since we talked before we came on camera that this is my last term. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I even told you about it beforehand. When Elliot, you called to ask me to come on the show, I said, if we're going to talk national politics, I want you to name one good thing Obama did, and I've got the good thing that Trump did.
Okay. The thing that I think Obama did that has the potential to be really good is recognizing Cuba.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Because I think by recognizing Cuba, by having Americans go to Cuba and seeing the country, I think eventually that's going to turn Cuba over into an ally and get rid of the system of government that they have.
And to this point, I think that the one thing that the Trump, not the one thing, but actually the one thing that the Trump administration has done that has garnered bipartisan praise, bar none, has been criminal justice reform. And I think that there's a lot of problems there, and I think that's a step in the right direction. And I compliment him and his administration for realizing that and putting the hard work into getting that to happen, which was not easy. He did some heavy lifting in the Congress and the Senate, especially, to get that through. And I congratulate him for that. And when you have Van Jones on CNN saying nice things about the Trump administration, I can't think of better bipartisan support.
No, I agree with you. I think if we could get rid of personalities and talk about issues, and I'm talking about that Congress and everybody, because we're a divided country right now, but people seem to divide because of personality rather than issue. They don't even know a lot of the issues. The press doesn't tell you a lot of the issues. But if we could get past that and talk about issues instead of personalities, we'd be a lot better off.
It was funny. Last week I was online, and I usually don't talk politics online, but I got sucked into some thread with a couple of people that are known in the city, and we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I said half jokingly, we lost our longtime cat at the house this past week. 19 years old. We love you, Yoda. Rest in peace. I said, I don't have time for this. I'm mourning my cat. And all four people on it that were ready to stab me with dull spoons in the eye were like, oh, I'm so sorry. So I use that as an example. As I do think that we do sometimes get all wrapped up into the show of the politics and the back and forth, and we don't always take a step back and see it. We agree in a lot more areas than we disagree.
Absolutely, and I think that's important for people to understand, is that there can be more agreement, but people are more important than parties. And it seems to me that you know how they say now in Washington the Democrats really control their party. I mean, it seems to me Democrats don't think on their own. They are not allowed to think on their own because they have to follow.
I think it was a long time ago. Somebody asked Will Rogers, is he a member of an organized political party? And he said, no, I'm a Democrat. I don't think the Democrats are. I think the Republicans have been much better at towing the party line and getting that party discipline in votes in Congress than the Democrats will ever be. You look at votes to reconsider. I don't think the Republicans lost more than 1 or 2 in the 6 or 8 years they were in the majority. The Democrats have already lost 8 or 10.
If the Republicans were united as a party, we'd have a wall.
Which we need and should have.
And that went nowhere when the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate.
And if the president delivered what he said he was going to deliver, Mexico would pay for it.
Yeah.
There's different ways for Mexico to pay for it. One is in the higher tariffs. But
I don't think we're getting.
But let's move to a couple of city things, okay?
You got me to say nice things about Trump. I got you to say nice things about Obama. Yeah. I'll declare victory and move on.
So what's happening in the city?
A previous city councilor, I asked a question not on the air.
Yeah.
Because this really bugs me. The 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in Beverly. I want to know 2 things. Why we have it. In other words, was there a problem with people getting hurt? And I mean, what's the purpose? And number 1. Number 2 is, has the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit helped that problem? And is it enforced?
All right. A couple of things. As a city councilor, the most frequent complaint that I get is traffic issues. And one of the biggest, especially on side streets, is people speeding. People going over the speed limit. And I remember Russ Rollins, before he retired, said, the problem is the speed limit's 30 miles an hour, and people that live in these neighborhoods think and feel as if that's too fast. I'm just thinking of, what's the road between New Balch and McKay? I made it one
County
way.
Way?
No. Anyway, use New Ball Street for an example. If you do 30 miles an hour down that road and you're standing in the front lawn, it seems that it's faster than you should be allowed to go down that street. You know, the mayor, through several campaigns, heard people are driving too fast in our residential areas. At the time, state law said, unless you change, I think it was a home rules petition, unless you change state law to lower your default speed limit, the speed limit's 30. So we got the home rule petition, we lowered it to 25, and now that gives police the tool that if people are going too fast in that neighborhood, they have a tool to help address it.
Okay, so has that happened?
I don't have any data in front of me. I don't know, honestly.
All right.
Well,
Sure,
I have gotten less complaints about people driving faster through neighborhoods. I don't know if that's anecdotal or
Okay.
if people are already running from my office and knocking on doors and they're telling them, who knows?
So basically what it comes down to is, I think a lot of people are very nervous with kids around the neighborhood, but the traffic getting too fast. And it was a traffic calming suggestion. Those are the magic words.
Yeah.
And it's
my question was just, has it been effective? But do you have any other issues that?
Well, I think one of the things that's come to light recently is, well, aside from the $3.5 million that's being spent mysteriously on something to do improvements in the security in the schools, whatever that means.
I'll speak to that briefly.
Go ahead.
There's and we were briefed on that, probably to a level of specificity more than has gone out in the public. I didn't see anything on that I saw to be untoward. I saw some things that will definitely make our school environments safer for children. Beyond that, I would suggest that you go to the mayor's office.
I recognize that you don't want to, at this stage of the game.
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, I don't want to put out information that could then be used to circumvent those
yeah.
measures.
Yeah, before they're implemented. Yeah.
Right.
So I think everybody understands that's going to happen. So,
And number two, this was disclosed to us in executive session, and I want to be mindful of that and not run afoul of any rules that I'm supposed to observe to that.
I think the other issue that's coming up is cities getting into the whole business of the last mile. That we have a pretty decent transportation system in terms of train stations.
Yep.
And as was shown up in the Salem News the last couple of weeks, more and more emphasis is on, okay, you got to the train station. Well, I work at cell signaling, and that's a long walk, especially on a cold, sweat day. It's a fairly long walk just to get from...
I don't even know if you could walk it, could you?
You could, yeah.
Up at Kings Grant?
Yeah. It's a long walk to get there from here.
Yep.
You can drive there from here, you can walk there from here. But at the same time, just to get to the Cummings Center, that's a long walk. So I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on how do we get people around.
Well, I mean, I just saw a release last week that there are initiatives. I think there was some grant funding to push some last mile transportation initiatives. I don't think it was actually going to be run or funded by the city, but I think the city was trying to come up with ways to advocate for that and facilitate it. And I agree, that last mile piece.
So the question now comes up, you used to have trolley lines going down Cabot Street. Cabot Street's going to get a major overhaul. We're going to put the trolleys back. They don't call them trolleys anymore. They're light rail.
Is the city going to fund light rail on Cabot Street? No.
No,
Why not?
you know what would be nice?
No,
Because
seriously,
it's cost
why not?
prohibitive.
But I've mentioned this a number of times, even when I was running for council. Make Cabot Street and Rantoul Street each one way, going in the opposite direction. And then you've got parking. You shuttle people around on a bus, not
Right. No, I know what you. I know that's been mentioned, and by more than just you. I think it would definitely be worth at least exploring the concept.
Years ago, when I was on the
I do
zoning
know
board
that
of
there is a new endeavor to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, George.
When I was on the zoning board of appeals, we got to review the city plan,
The master plan.
master plan. And the question is, it says make Cabot Street and Rantoul Street one way. And it appears in every master plan, I guess ever since, but it's never been implemented. So I guess we get to the issue of there's a lot of good ideas out there, but they aren't implemented. Nothing happens to them.
Well, I'm going to speculate that there's probably a substantial cost to that, and there's probably other public service projects and public improvement projects that we have to do. So I'm not saying that anybody said no. I think the answer has been,
Well, this is
to
the same
do that
answer
right,
you-
it's going to take a lot of funding, and
Well, you can't get something for nothing. That's what that comes down
as
to.
you said prior to the show,
The light just went on.
the light just went on. But
So,
I do want to
last
say
words of wisdom.
one word to wisdom to you, but before that, I'm taking it. I just want to congratulate the city and the mayor for a terrific job of plowing the streets this winter. The streets have been excellent.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll pass that along.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and hope to see you next time with another interesting show on what's happening in Beverly.